Welcome to Digital Marketing ROI, the podcast that connects marketing to your business's revenue and covers everything you need to know to stay up to date in this crazy digital marketing world.
Welcome to Digital Marketing ROI. I'm your host, Shannon Allen, and I'm joined by Krystal Vivian. I hate to say it, but it's once you get past the 4th of July, sometimes I feel like summer's over.
Especially because you have a kid in school, right? So
Yes.
like you're back to school and you're like, oh, for me, my kid's in school 20 years.
Yeah, that's true.
So for me, I'm like, it does feel a little bit like summer's over, but it also feels to me like summer, I don't know, we've got some things planned for later this month and in August. And I don't know, for me, it feels like summer we're like smack dab in the middle, but I don't feel so much on the downs, down moves.
I know. It's end of July and we've still got some great summer months. And then it just feels like life is busier and busier than ever before. Don't you feel that way?
That is very true. It does feel like it goes too fast. And I want to hold on to every moment, especially because summer's the best. Like it's lake days and pool days and sunshine. And I don't have to bundle up to go outside to the mail.
Yeah, I know. And I do love fall, but we are not skipping ahead to fall. We are still at the end of July. We've got lots of great summer. So
yes,
today we're going to talk about really the evolution of digital reporting, how it's changed, and specifically how we measure at FDS. We're very particular. I'm constantly changing and evolving our reporting. We work with a new partner now called TapClicks that's dashboard specific. Those of you that are not familiar with the way that FDS does their reporting, Google Analytics can be good for certain things, but Google Analytics is free and people forget that. It does not report app delivery the way it should. It is a blueprint to a few things, but most digital companies should and are having their own digital platforms to do the reporting, so it's much more accurate.
Yeah, Google Analytics only shows you a portion of the story, and it's helpful, but it's a free tool. The free of anything is only going to be so much.
Exactly. And we're constantly evolving. Sometimes I think we go too deep because we really analyze the data, but we really have tried to move away from some of the vanity metrics, such as focusing too far on click-through rates. So click-through rate in search engine marketing or even in display is you take how many impressions, which in display, we dictate the impressions, right? We pick 200,000 impressions, and then we divide it by how many people clicked on it, which is only one measurement, right? There's view-throughs, and then that gives us a click-through rate. So I use it as a benchmark, but we don't live and die by it. And sometimes what I consider a low metric is some of the best reporting we can do because it tells us where the data needs to go, where we want to move it.
And I think that's something that sets us apart is that we are looking at not just any one metric and living and dying by it, but we're trying to understand the full story of what the data is telling us and how that connects to the client's bottom line. So, and reporting changes, like you said with Google Analytics, that used to be the gold standard for digital reporting, especially for web traffic. It's everything was through Google Analytics, and that has changed a whole bunch. And we've talked ad nauseum about the death of the cookie and all of that. And you mentioned earlier that we switched to TapClicks earlier this year for all of our reporting. How has, over the last few years, specifically to FDS, how have we evolved that approach to measurement, and what drove us to move away from the CTR and the bounce rates, the click-through rates and the bounce rates, to looking more holistically at what we're currently measuring?
First and foremost, we know that data is probably underutilized. 87% of marketers report that the data that comes in from their company is very underutilized. So by knowing that, my job for somebody's digital marketing is really why this podcast evolved, is to take the data that we get and bring it back to connect it to return on investment for a client. So how do we do that, right? How do we start talking about how this works? Again, it all ties back to the consumer journey. One of the things that we started to focus on about 2 years ago, I would say, and we really have leaned into it, is instead of breaking everything down into clicks and website view-throughs and physical visits, we started talking about total actions, right? So in a typical campaign, we are measuring how many consumers took action, whether that be through an SEM campaign, a programmatic display, a video OTT, right? Even social. How did we drive social? That's a service we provide. they also can have actions that are taking place. So we started to identify really our advertising versus our services, breaking that out. And in advertising alone, we really focus on that total action and look at it holistically with everything. And then we break it down by product as well to see how we're measuring it. That has helped us to tell a different story. Not only do we talk about cost total action, we help them understand and benchmark cost per action. And let's be clear, here's what an action is to me. An action is somebody clicked on an ad. An action could be a form fill. If they clicked on it, that's considered a website visit. So website visits are tied into that because we brought them back to the website. We have a view through means that I served them the ad. They never clicked on it, but within 30 days, they came back to your website. And then last but not least, a physical visit, right? Knowing that they walked, a consumer, we can track through geofencing on display and video OTT that somebody was served the video or the display and walked in. So those combined is what we consider total actions. And we have the ability to look at that and then measure it against what their spend level is. And sometimes we just need to do that for that first year that they're doing it to come up against, are we improving it? If I was at a car dealer last month that May was not a good month and their cost per action in some cases had gone up just simply because they were not getting as much traffic. They're dealing with construction issues. They're dealing with just overall the car business right now, and the spring was a little bit slower. And so that's not a bad metric. It's aligning with the next step that we'd love to talk about, which is how many units sold. And so we go deeper into not just the actions that we brought to the table, but overall with your marketing, what's your cost per unit sold and how are you measuring? So yeah, our approach is to stop thinking individually about clicks and website view-throughs and website visits and look at it more holistically as how did we move the needle compared to last month or last year? And how is this affecting your business and what's the ROI? So that's like kind of big picture. And then we break it down individually. So that was a lot. Boy, that was a lot for me to talk about.
That was a great explanation of why that is more valuable than traditional conversion tracking. And you're looking at it all together. And it makes me think of the consumer journey, right? Because every consumer, depending on where they are at the consumer journey, they might take a different action based on where they are. So how do you connect total actions to the consumer journey?
So that's a great question. Try to look at it more holistically instead of just thinking, we don't want to think about just the last click. We want to look at it all together because what's more valuable? I very honestly, with a consumer journey approach, what's even more valuable to me than the click, really? And I know this sounds crazy, but is that website view through? Because I know that our frequency was strong enough that we delivered that ad enough that even though they didn't take action right then, because they might not be the person that's going to click or fill out a form, but they came back to the website because something caught their attention. So when we look at all these pieces individually, and you might even put more weight into one than the other, we still say all together, this consumer journey brought them here based on X amount of total actions, right? So the consumer journey, measuring everything, that there's value in everything. It's not just about the quantity of that, it's the quality of that. So there might be less website view throughs and less physical visits, but we know that quantity of those could very well have a higher conversion than total clicks. Right? Because
yes.
Let's be clear, clicks can be mistakes sometimes. And I'm not afraid to tell people that. But what I do know, what's not a mistake when somebody comes back to my website within 30 days, or I know that somebody that physically walked into my physical store, that I had delivered them a video commercial or display ad or even SEM, that I know that's really valuable because they're in the market. So we were targeting it. So that report, now we turn it around. We tell the story, right? We tell the story of the consumer journey with the total actions, but then we bring it back and partner with our clients to say, now, what does that mean to you? Is this resonating? Why do you think physical visits are down? In the story that I just gave with the car dealer, like, we knew going in that physical visits were down. And because I drive on West Main, I know why physical visits are down because of the construction. But to hear them resonate, there wasn't anything wrong with talking about that. We're like, wow, it's hurting you right now because of the construction. And what came out of that data was the story of, we need to remind people that, like, we'll bring the car to you. We strategized a different approach to bring more consumers to buy cars. even with the construction going on. So what the data did was take them through the consumer journey, tell us we have less traffic than we've had. And now we're going to do some branding to make sure that the consumers out there know, hey, we'll make your life easier by bringing it to you.
Yeah.
Again, the reporting led us to the strategy. And that's what ultimately my job is, to make sure the campaigns that we're running are taking us to help bring them a higher ROI.
And being able to pivot so quickly as well. And because that construction, I've driven on West Main, so with that construction, it's not going away anytime soon, right? But being able to pivot in real time and say, okay, this is what we need to do. And then you can see the effects of that within a month.
Yep.
How do you approach measuring different campaign types? Like you have OTT, you have display, you have SEM. They each have different measurement capabilities. How do you differentiate that?
So that's a good question. One thing I like to make sure our clients understand, first and foremost, I talk to them about their own conversion, right? So there's two types of conversions that I'm always looking at. The first and foremost is what I'm doing. So out of all of our solutions, so if you talk about display, programmatic display, and then OTT, which is still a programmatic approach because it's an auction. And then lastly, our SEM, which is more lower funnel, ready to make a purchase. We talk to clients not only about what the conversion rate typically is on each of those solutions, but what it is specifically for their industry. So in other words, SEM has the highest conversion, but it might have even a higher conversion for an auto dealer versus a chiropractor. Everything is different. Somebody that has SEM that you're buying right online has a really high conversion because we know exactly with that SEM ad that they did Google Shopping and they purchased something. So that's a higher conversion. So we talk about conversions for the solutions, not only that we are doing for them, but we also talk to them about it, what it looks like for their industry. And then we talk about the other part of the conversion is if we do bring them to your website, because that's a click, that's a website view through, whether that's SEM or display, what is their conversion? Once we bring them to their website or bring them into the store, how do they see a conversion? Are you measuring that? And do you know? Most clients don't know that answer. So because they don't know that answer, my job is to make sure that we have the right balance of each of those solutions because they do measure differently. Upper funnel versus middle funnel of a consumer journey versus lower funnel. And so typically display and video OTT fall under that branding, right? So it tends to be more awareness, a little bit of consideration, and there's obviously some conversion in there versus SEM actions, which, as I said, is more lead generation and is towards the bottom of the consumer journey. That is when they're ready to make a purchase, right? That zero moment of truth.
Yeah, and conversion up higher level in the funnel might just mean converting to the next step in the funnel and going
next
further
stage
down.
in the consumer journey, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I go back to the website view through. I put more weight in that tends to have a higher conversion because they've remembered you, your frequency was strong enough, they came back. But by the way, there can be people that clicked on your ad, went to your website and still came back in 30 days because they're still thinking for you to make a purchase. I think about my daughter, she just went through her summer camps. But when I was looking and searching for summer camps, I was doing my research. I was going on and the ads that came up paid were taking me there, but I ended up coming back multiple times until I made a decision. And that is typically what we see. And which is why when you talk about solutions like display and OTT, they live in a 30-day window. So within that 30 days, if we're tracking the measurements and the clicks and the website view throughs, if they didn't convert in the first 30 days and they start showing the same interest in the next 30 days, they're still part of that funnel. Right? And so a lot of times the person we tracked in March might be the same person in June when it's a car they're buying because they've taken the time to search. But there's every one of those touch points are still a very valuable part of what the data is telling us.
Yeah. Are you still following that marketing rule of 7 where it's 7 touch points until the conversion?
More like 18.
Okay.
No, I'll be honest. The numbers change. It depends on where they're at in the buying cycle, but there is a statistic that shows that it's more touch points now than ever before. We are delivered more marketing than we've ever been delivered.
Yes.
And there's all different levels, right? So we know that when it comes to social, that's another layer that not only can there be conversion there, but it's a different message. And so we track that a little bit differently versus advertising, but they all feed together to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
The best reporting we do is when somebody is using all of our solutions because they all fit together like the perfect piece of the puzzle for the consumer journey. So there's no missing data for us. We have a client that we work with that they specifically use somebody different for their search engine marketing than they do with their branding with us. And as much as I'll partner with them and do what I need to do, there is that missing piece that sometimes I'll be like, can you show me your reporting so I can see if we're on track? Because there is a missing piece of that puzzle.
Well, yeah, because that data and the data from the SEM informs the decisions that you're making with other solutions too. So I think that makes perfect sense. I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges with reporting. There's been a lot of privacy changes. There are measurement challenges. How do you ensure that the data that you're reporting on is accurate and actionable for strategic decisions?
Great question. And it's very important and should be important to know whoever you work with, that the data that you're getting not only adheres to all privacy, the vendors they're using, but is also accurate. So the first part of that is, it's why I stopped 8 years ago using Google Analytics as our reporting platform. And this is my third reporting platform that I have moved to. And it's not an easy task. It's like moving a CRM system, right? Nobody wants to do that. But I do it for the benefit of our clients to ensure that we have not only some of the most accurate information, but we can put it into a way that they can understand it, because that's important for me. So first and foremost, it's working with a platform like TabClicks that we trust and works with all of our vendors, right? So the privacy part comes in as my trusted partners that I'm never afraid to share, the Simplify of the world and the Matchcraft of the world. We rely on some of the best, not only in the US, but in multiple countries, that they are really good at this and they constantly stay above the fold of privacy, right? There's a lot of vendors out there that I could be using for a lower impression cost, a lower inventory cost when it comes to programmatic, which this is the third party, the cookie, the death of the cookies conversation. I work with a partner, Simplify, that has been on top of this for way before the talk of the death of the cookie, because they understood the privacy laws, right? They utilize data that's more first party data that is given that permission. We're not relying on inaccurate third party data. So I use vendors to make sure that the privacy laws, first and foremost, are covered and they're the best in the industry. And then secondly, I use a platform that can ensure that the data I am reporting, we're weeding out the information that is not accurate. And there's a lot of inaccurate data that people get reported.
There really is. And it is really mind blowing when you dig into it and when you see it. And as I have done more reporting and gotten my hands on more, it is interesting, but being able to parse it out and working with the right partners and truly understanding the data and what it means, but then also working with the right partners, I think makes a world of difference in making sure that things are accurate and understandable.
One of the things I'll ask my sales reps to do, if we're working with a client that's debating like working with us, I'll say, can you get a copy of their latest marketing report, digital report? What I'm doing with that, it's not because I'm trying to steal ideas or try to win the business. If their reporting is good and things are firing on all cylinders and their SEM has great click-through rates and optimization and very good SEM impression share, I'll be very honest with the client and say, look, they're doing a good job. They're doing what they're supposed to do. And I would love you to come work with us. But if you're happy, I'm happy with your reporting. I have no problem telling them that, because sometimes it's then just about relationship. Maybe they want to work with us because we're more present. Maybe it's because we're local, but I have no problem telling somebody that they're doing a good job. On the flip side, that report can also tell me a lot. I can tell if they're buying low quality, if they have a really high number of impressions, but they're selling it at a $4 or $5 CPM when mine is 10 to 12. I can say that's not worth it. It's not quality. It is quantity over quality, and that is not worth it. I can look at that and tell them that and say that this is not accurate reporting or this is what you're paying. I have no problem telling them if their baby is ugly.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what the report will do. So that report will really tell a lot. And I would hope that somebody could take our reports and go back to a client and be like, I don't know what to tell you. They're doing what they should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely. And seeing the whole story and everything.
Yep.
So we always like to end with ROI. It's the whole focus of this podcast. How does the FDS evolved approach to digital reporting translate to a higher ROI for our clients?
I think we covered it from beginning to end. Everything that we do in reporting, everything is to tie it back to ROI. So we use the data to tell us a story. We tie it back to the return on investment, like I said, with the conversions. So on each solution, we really will tie it back and say, this is what we're seeing. What are you seeing? The missing piece with ROI, and I tell this to every client, I can't just tell you what my reports are doing and what your campaigns are doing. I need you to tell me what business is doing. Is the cash register ringing? What are your units sold? How are you measuring how many new members you've signed in? How many people are signing up for mortgages? So the ROI, to bring it all back, is I will use my data to tell the story, and you have to feed me your data so we can piece it all together so we have a final piece of that story. But when you do that, you can go back to the powers that be, the owners or the CEO of the company, and say, this is why we don't want to stop to do marketing. This is why it's working.
Yeah.
We had an RV company that we were working with that in the first year, we brought over 170,000 consumers to their website, utilizing the first time they've ever done marketing. And when they decided to move all of their marketing away from us and just do internal YouTube, there was no doubt in my mind they would have taken a hit.
Yeah.
Because 170,000 consumers to your website, even if you're closing 1% of them on a conversion, that's 1,700 people that you better hope you got their attention through YouTube.
Yeah. On one platform, closed garden.
Yeah. And bring it back to not only the cost per action, but cost per unit sold. You might have saved a lot of money in marketing, but how much money did you leave on the table by not growing overall business?
It really comes back to that revenue.
It does. Yep.
Yeah.
I think we covered everything. I love to talk about reporting. It's one of my favorite parts. I'm sure we'll do a few more of these. We've got some good ideas. Krystal and I are working hard on our studio. So in the Kalamazoo office. So hopefully coming soon to you, you might see us in person on our YouTube channel, right?
Yes, we're hoping it's a lot more complicated to put all of those pieces together.
It is. We'll get there.
I think that we thought, but we're getting there. And we did set a deadline by the end of the year.
We did. So we've got a little bit of time, but it'll be here before we know it. I'm sorry, I won't say that.
I know. Well, it's true though. It's true though. So
it is.
Well, this conversation though, thank you.
Thank you. It was good. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in today, and join us for our next episode of Digital Marketing ROI.
You've been listening to Digital Marketing ROI from Federated Digital Solutions. Do you have an idea for a future episode or a burning digital marketing question? Text ROI to 45364 to get a link where you can share your idea. Subscribe to get new episodes every other Thursday, plus Tip Tuesday insights every week.
Podcasts by Federated Media.